In this episode of the Christian Philosopher, we talk about the argument from the character of Jesus. Welcome back, everyone. Scott Sullivan here from the Aquinas School of Theology and Philosophy. Today, we are talking about the first reason in my list to think that Christianity is true. That is the argument from the character of Jesus. This is really an old argument. It goes back to the church father and theologian Origen. So this is nothing new. It was made popular in more recent times by the British professor of English, C.S. Lewis, and it's still around. So I think it's a pretty good argument. And the purpose of the argument is to use historical data to rule out any sort of fence-sitting position about Jesus. So what is fence-sitting position? Well, it'd be the idea that, I don't think Jesus was God. Okay, I won't go that far. I think he was just a good teacher. He was like a Buddha or a Socrates or something like that. It's positions like this that this argument is trying to rule out. You can't take this kind of middle-of-the-road approach when it comes to Jesus. And the argument goes like this. Jesus claimed to be God. Either that claim is true or it's false. If it's true, then Jesus is God. If it's false, then either Jesus knew it was false or he did not. If he knew it was false and he said it anyway, then Jesus is a pathological liar. If he didn't know it was false and said it anyway, then Jesus is some sort of raging lunatic. So either Jesus is God or a liar or a lunatic. But if it's not reasonable to think that Jesus was a liar or a lunatic, we must conclude that therefore Jesus was God. Now, what's so great about this argument is its simplicity. All you really have to do is establish the first premise, and then all the rest of the logic kicks into gear. And it's pretty easy to establish the first premise that Jesus claimed to be God. He thought he was divine. There are three reasons for this. Number one, Jesus' own words and actions indicate he thought he was divine. In other words, Christ said and did things that seem inexplicable if he thought he were just a man. For example, he claims to be Yahweh, the name for God in the Old Testament. He says he has the power to judge and raise the dead. But the Jewish idea was that God alone can judge or raise the dead. He says he is the judge over all peoples and will separate them at the end of time. He says he was before Abraham. He says all judgment has been given to the Son. He says he is the door through which men enter life, the true vine, the way, and the truth, and the life. He says he pre-existed with the Father. He says loyalty to him fulfills all of man's deepest needs. The second reason we know that Jesus claimed to be divine is that this is what all of his followers thought he claimed too. So all of the earliest disciples of Jesus thought that he claimed to be divine as well. For example, from the earliest times, we see prayers addressed to Jesus. In Peter's sermons in the book of Acts, Jesus is called the author of life, the judge of the living and the dead, and the Lord of all. In the epistle of James, Jesus is called the Lord Jesus Christ. In Paul, there are numerous places, tons of places, far too many to list here, where Paul indicates that he thought Jesus claimed to be divine. But to list just one, Paul uses the phrase, the Christ who is God over all. The third reason we can know that Jesus claimed to be divine is because this is precisely how his enemies took his words to mean as well. The enemies of Jesus at least thought he was claiming to be divine. If Jesus never claimed divinity, then it's very difficult to explain the charges of blasphemy and his subsequent execution on the cross. So whether Jesus really was God or not, that's at least what he thought of himself. That's what his followers thought, and that's what his enemies thought as well. And all this gives us good reason to prove that first premise, which is really the only thing we need to show that Jesus claimed to be God. And then the rest of the argument follows logically. Jesus claimed to be God. Either that claim is true or it's false. If it's true, then Jesus is God. If it's false, then Jesus either knew it was false or he did not. If he knew it was false and said it anyway, Jesus is a pathological liar. If he didn't know it was false, Jesus is severely insane. Therefore, Jesus is either God or a liar or a lunatic. So that's really it. Unless you're willing to think that Jesus was a pathological liar or a raving lunatic, all right, if you're not willing to go that route, Okay? You can't stay on this middle position. You can't say, oh, he was just a good guy. He was just a good teacher. He was just like a Socrates or a Buddha. That one's not an option. And if you're not willing to think that he was a pathological liar or a lunatic, you should accept his claim that Jesus is in fact God. So therefore, I think it's reasonable, given this argument, to think that Christianity is true. Hey guys, just real quickly here, if you like these videos and you want to learn more about some of the stuff that I teach, you can visit my website, scottimsullivan.com. I have what I call the Aquinas School of Theology and Philosophy. We have courses in logic, philosophy, theology, a whole bunch of stuff. You can check it out. We have a free trial. It's available on my website. Again, check it out, scottimsullivan.com.